Migration Matters Festival evening of performance, prose, and poetry. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Chiwe Chihana, and I'll be your host from now right up to the end. Really excited. Thanks for joining us. On your seats, you've each got a postcard, so please take one and give us some feedback for tonight's event. We'll really appreciate it. So we've got an amazing, fantastic lineup. I'm really excited tonight. We've got 3 performances. We're going to have PM, who will be opening the night. Then after PM, 15 minutes later, we're going to have Sheffield's own Sarah Orola, who's going to be performing on stage. And then we're going to cap the night with Lemsise. Lemsise, everybody. Right, and before I actually introduce PM, I would like to tell you that there's PM has an audiobook out. It's called From AM to PM, Poems to Help You Through the Day. And at the store out there, there's a card where you can scan a QR code where you can purchase the audiobook for £3 and odd. I've forgotten the little bits at the end there. £3 what? £3.99. Thank you very much. Right. So we have the privilege tonight of having PM performing. PM is an award-winning poet who explores themes of intersectional identity and more in this bite-sized spoken word show, simply by being herself. So get ready for this amazing performance by PM. And yeah, a round of applause. PM.
Hey Fever, am I right? So thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and thank you so much to Migration Matters Festival for having me here. I am so lucky to be here, and I know you've just been introduced to me, but I'm going to do something slightly unorthodox and introduce myself again. So, hello, my name is PM, and sometimes I like to compare myself to an old man. Note how I didn't say old woman, though, because old women have a special quality to them which old men don't. You can see it if you brush away the dust. Buried inside them is a treasure chest where pearls of wisdom remain. But much like a cranky old man who has known too much of the world to carry any more of it with him, I buried my treasure chest long ago. But on those cold winter nights, when I see my breath crystallize before my eyes, I carry those crystals and think, I may have some treasures left after all. Thank you. So, that was my first poem. That's what I like to call a sneaky poem, just putting one thing in there quickly. So like I said, my name is PM. I've been doing poetry for quite a while, and with Just Being Me, obviously I got that lovely introduction, but I wanted to tell you a little bit more about what you can expect from tonight. So firstly, I'm going to ask you a question. Has anyone ever been to a poetry show before? Maybe like a show of hands or a whoop whoop? Oh, wow, so many. I did not expect that. Great. So I was going to tell you guys kind of like how to show your appreciation for poems throughout the night. You got it already. I didn't even have to do anything. Amazing. Yes. So what my sister lovingly calls snaplaws is how you can show your appreciation for any poems tonight. So can I get a bit of a snaplaws going in the audience? Yes. Amazing, perfect, you guys got it already. But you don't have to be that quiet, it's all good. Can we also get some whoop whoops going in the audience? Let's go 3, 2, 1. Oh, come on guys, I know it's a Saturday, but we can do better than that. Come on, 3, 2, 1. Amazing, so like I said, if any of the poems resonate with you throughout the night, snaplaws, a whoop whoop, a hell yeah, whatever you want to do, it's all good. And yeah, so with Just Being Me, what I wanted to do is kind of bring poetry to sort of like a less poetry audience, if that makes sense, because I do a lot of work with schools and people who are kind of already primed to enjoy poetry. But how I like to use my poems, what I tell people is I like to use poetry to kind of take snapshots of moments of my life that are important to me. So I don't know if anyone read the description of the show very carefully, but I did say I would be performing poems about onion rings as well, so there will definitely be some of that in there, but also poems about my personal experiences as British Indian, as queer in like all senses of the word, gender, sexuality, and also as a poet, because that is part of my identity. So that is what you can expect from today. So I am going to be performing a poem that I wrote with an organisation called AQ Arts, who are actually based in London, and they do stuff that's pretty similar to Migration Matters Festival. They bring artists across African and Asian diasporas together to write poetry. And I thought this would be a really nice kind of opening to the show. And it goes like this. She asks me, where do we come from? And I tell her, we began with an empty page, a blank white desert starved of possibilities, starved of ink. The ancestors hailed rain down from their pens, telling stories we hold so deep that now we wear them like tattoos. We squeeze our skin to draw that ink to the surface and watch it fall to the page. Some days they are more stains than words, more sores than sorcery, so we end up back at page 1. So go backwards, follow the famished road of your veins to the heart, and listen. What is she trying to tell you? I'm sure she knows far more than I. Thank you. So the next poem that I'm going to do, I have a funny story about it, and I feel like as soon as I say the title, you'll be able to understand why the story is funny. So I did my first big show out of lockdown at Harrow Arts Centre last year, and it was such a great time. I really enjoyed it, and a lot of my family and friends came along to support me, and actually, one of my uncles came along who I love dearly. He is so sweet. He makes the best food, but he's not known for like coming to these kinds of events. And so he turned up as like a nice show of support and surprise. And midway through my set, I was like, oh, my uncle's here, great. And the name of the poem that I'm about to perform is First Kiss Story. So I was a bit like, oh my God, I have to tell the story of my first kiss to my uncle. Okay, let's see how this goes. So, without further ado, this is that poem, and it goes like this. Here, in this local park, with the unforgettable stench of weed and under-boob sweat, is where you will almost have your first kiss. Twice. Well, 3 times. With 2 boys and 1 girl. With the high body count and private location, though, you are unsure if this is more murder mystery than first kiss story. Although, something did die there. 3 times you returned home with dry lips and wet eyes. Your face didn't belong to you anymore. It was an abandoned haunted house. Each empty room places they could have kissed. A warm hand brushing against a cold cheek. Fingers sweeping the hair out of your eyes like curtains drawn back to reveal the morning sunlight, except there was no sunrise. The sky stayed dark and cold. Your hair still stank of weed. You will have your first kiss 5 years later, though. Those boys, that girl, will be ghosts crawling and living inside you. And when this boy leans in, you will feel them scratching up the corridor of your throat, and you will vomit them out in apologies. I'm sorry, I'm really nervous. I've never done this before. I don't know what to do. And clink. Your teeth will cheers together, and shaky, nervous bodies will erupt into laughter, into daylight. Congratulations, your lips have finally been doused with someone else's saliva. And that was all you needed to wash those ghosts away. Thank you. So the next poem also has a funny story to it. I don't know how much people here follow cricket. No? Okay, good. Because I don't know anything about cricket, which will probably be evident from this poem. But in Indian culture, in particular, cricket is like a huge part of it. And my mum, who is actually here today, oh, thank you. My mum, who's here today, loves cricket. And in 2019, there was a really big game between India and Pakistan. And the rivalry between India and Pakistan, some people attribute to the partition of India, which created India and Pakistan in 1947, 1948. And my dad's side of the family is actually from a place called Sindh in India, which is like on the border between Pakistan and India. And so I wanted to kind of tie those elements together because sometimes being British Indian, or I feel like indeed being attached to like any two cultures, you can kind of feel disconnected from one or the other or kind of pulled between them. And so that's what I tried to capture in this poem, which is called The Cricket Poem for My Mum. And it goes like this. The screams of patriotism reverberate throughout my house, shaking the foundations to their core. Bharat, mera desh! India, my country, my mum yells at the TV. It is summertime, so all the windows are open and the entirety of London can hear my mum's love for her country. She clasps her palms together, praying for India's victory in this cricket match against Pakistan. And on TV, a Pakistani clasps their hands together in prayer as well. And I wonder if somewhere in the messy telephone line up to God, their prayers are caught, fates intertwined as the countries once were. Who will he choose to help? But my mum's side was chosen for her the day she was born in Mumbai, India. And despite having lived here for ages, all the rain and grey has never once dampened her orange and green flame. She tells me, Beta, how do you expect me to clean the house when the cricket match is on, huh? But she tries to anyways and runs back and forth between the wickets of the kitchen sink and the TV, appointing me as scorekeeper. And she tells me, Beta, we need to win. India need to win. And I think, we? Am I truly part of that we? Because you see, half of me is them. Is British, is the Raj, is the conquerors, the colonizers, the mesmerizers, the hypnotizers, the thieves. But then my mum charges back into the room with full force, screaming she has abandoned washing a bowl and instead watches the bowl of Virat Kohli, India's captain. Everything rests on this as he lifts the ball and sends it flying. It was a tough one, she says, Beta, but we did it. We? Kohli takes a break and wipes the sweat from his brow after that intense run from the wicket. My mum takes her shawl and wipes the sweat from her brow after that intense run in from the kitchen. Everyone in the crowd wants the same thing. He goes in again. She leans in. Everyone in the crowd wants the same thing. Everyone is dancing to the same beat of the dul, and I look up again to see if God has placed himself in the hands of someone else. Like in 1947, it was the cartographer, taking his pencil and tearing the earth in half. In 2019, the umpire takes his whistle and traces around those same lines. In the TV, I see the curve and flicker of green and brown and orange darting in and out of another sea of brown like fish. and I see the white moon hide behind the grass, ashamed, embarrassed, a confused newborn. And my mum's shouting suddenly gets louder and louder and is mixed with the beat of the door. Corley goes in again and she says, yes, we win, we won, we win, we won, we win. We. The orange and green flag swims high in the air, announcing India's victory. And suddenly, my dada and dadi appear in the living room, ashamed, embarrassed, confused, searching for the other half of their white moon. Thank you. So, kind of playing on the theme of women, I wrote a poem, I think a couple years ago now, on International Women's Day, because I was quite tired with seeing the rhetoric of women being placed on a really high pedestal in order to be appreciated. And I think there's a lot to unpack here, because of course we should appreciate women. That's not what I am saying at all. And also women in like any form of the word. But I think the problem sometimes happens when we kind of idolize women so much that they become like so far removed from being a normal human being. And so then we expect them to do lots of things in a kind of superhuman capacity, like managing expectations of the house, but also cultural values. And I think we often see this a lot with brown and black women especially. So in that vein, I wrote this poem called Women. You, woman, a sun, rising each day to set each night, even though you know the pain of doing both. You, woman, a sea, spreading yourself across continents simultaneously, and sometimes even into those dark caves where no one else will go. And yes, sometimes you are tsunami, sometimes you are whirlpool. Good. Some people deserve to be drowned. I hope you wash them the fuck away. You, woman, a soil, built from the mud laying before you, growing things anew. It's a slow process. You're still sprouting, okay? So don't let anyone walk over you. And you, women, are woman. Not a natural wonder or an unnatural disaster. Not divine nor domestic, not anything you don't want to be, just woman. Thank you. So, like I was talking before about brown women, I think oftentimes with brown and black culture as well, we have kind of the image of the brown and black women as aunties. And there was also a funny story behind this as well, because one day I was just hanging out with my friend, who isn't Indian, and she was just like, you know, we were catching up, and then she was like, oh, can you walk me to the station? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So, you know, I put on my flip-flops and just was like, okay, let me just walk you to the station. And then she stopped me and she was like, dude, you're really looking like an Indian auntie today, you know? And I was like, why would you tell me this? I don't need to know that I'm looking like an auntie at like 20 or whatever. Like, this is a bit concerning. But I tried to unpack that idea a little bit, and I was actually like, maybe it's not too bad to be like an Indian auntie. So I wrote this poem, which is very obviously titled, Ways I'm More Like an Indian Auntie Than I Once Thought. And it goes like this. On a warm summer's day, in the early hours of the morning, my friend turns to me and says, dude, your vibes, just giving me Indian auntie vibes today, you know? Now, naturally, I was worried, because my friend isn't affiliated with Indian culture, so this could mean one of two things. One, she's not correct. She doesn't know anything about Indian culture. I can brush it off. She doesn't know what an Indian auntie looks like. Or two, Because she's not affiliated with Indian culture, she has an impartial view, and therefore maybe I should listen to what she's saying. But when I looked down, I realized maybe I am more like an Indian auntie than I once thought. Because my shoes have their own voice. Tell the world I do not give a fuck about proper footwear. House shoes are just as good outside of the house as in it. My earrings have their own body, weighing themselves down so far that the next day I am in pain. But like any good auntie, I remind myself, beauty is pain, and it is painful that I am this beautiful. My voice has its own will, slicing the English air with its Hindi. Only Hindi can accommodate the lack of shits that aunties give. And my tongue has its own stature. It is not difficult to place me in the crowd, and I can picture the shouts of my aunties before I picture their faces. And sometimes I believe in God. On the mornings just like that one, warm and early, with the smell of incense inviting me into the mandir. My tongue makes its body light for heavy Sanskrit prayers that I know have unburdened the hearts of so many aunties for generations before me. And it is in that moment that I realize maybe I am way more like an Indian auntie than I had once thought. Thank you. So as I said before, when I had that incident, I say incident like I'm being really dramatic, when my friend told me that I looked like an Indian auntie, I was 20, and I had my 21st birthday in lockdown, which, I mean, I feel like people can fill in the gaps here. It wasn't that great, but my parents were really sweet, and they made such a big effort to kind of help me celebrate my birthday and make an effort and be like, it's lockdown, but whatever, let's have a good time. And it was crazy how things went down, because I went downstairs, it was so lovely, we had a celebration, and then we went into the lounge to cut the cake, and then we heard some cooing in the lounge, and we have an old chimney that's been blocked off with a fireplace that's also been blocked off, and all of a sudden a pigeon emerged from the chimney. I cannot make this stuff up, and then I spent the morning / most of my 21st birthday trying to shoo this pigeon outside of the house. So what a great way to mark the day, am I right? So I wrote a poem about it, because how could I not? And it's called 21, and it goes like this. Like all good birthdays, it began with a pigeon. A patient and unruly thing, she had wedged her feathery body between the chimney and our old living room fireplace. So my dad, shovel in hand, broke the seal between her world and ours as she joined us on the coffee table for cake cutting. Like all good birthdays, it followed with friends, those impatient and unruly people. As a good Indian hostess, I threw cupcakes into their mouths at an incredible velocity until their stomachs were as full as my heart. My melanin body sunk lower and lower into a bath of sunlight, and I became drunk on tears of laughter. The sun held my hand. The sun hugged my body as I noticed the faintest bud of age, a wrinkle, began to blossom around my eyes. The sun told me it is time. So when midnight came, an impatient and unruly clock stared back at me. I wanted the cake to stay unsliced, the friends to freeze frame, to be on the cusp of aging, not to actually age. But when midnight came, and I begged the sun to reveal itself again, instead, It lulled me to sleep, whispering gratitude in my ear, as somewhere into the night, that pigeon cooed happily. Thank you. So, kind of playing off of the theme of growing up, when I first moved out of my parents' house for university, I feel like that's kind of the point when I felt like I was becoming an adult and kind of learning how to live by myself. And I noticed I had like really strange moments when I felt like an adult. So, for example, like one time I was buttering toast in the kitchen, probably late for uni actually, so it's probably not a good adulting move. And I was like, I feel really grown up right now. Look at me making my own toast, making my own breakfast, bearing in mind I was still late, but that doesn't matter. And I decided to compile all the times when I felt like an adult, and I wrote this poem. I feel like an adult when a new washing machine delights me. I feel like an adult when I butter my own toast. I feel like an adult when I somehow manage to get rid of a cold all by myself. I feel like an adult when the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, terrifies me instead of excites me. I feel like an adult when I see that there are too many paths open in front of me and I have only taken one. When too many tabs are open on my laptop, when I am tired at 5 p.m., when everything appears not as brightly colored as it used to, when I have to do my own dishes every day. But I feel like an adult most when my baby cousin asks if she can keep something that was once mine as a child, and I let her. I feel like an adult when chocolate sometimes tastes a bit too sweet, but don't tell anyone. I feel like an adult when I keep thinking about financial growth instead of physical growth, because let's face it, I'm not going to grow anymore. I feel like an adult when I keep thinking about money, when I keep thinking about debt, credit, checks, and actually have to go into a physical bank that I know could have taken, to do something that could have taken 5 minutes online. If they just had the proper website, I know it would have been okay. I feel like an adult when I am calm. I feel like an adult when I realize I might actually be an extrovert instead of an introvert. I feel like an adult when I realize that the world is not school and school is not the world. I feel like an adult when I have to try to explain to people that the world is not flat. When I go to the gym more often than I see my friends. When I actually enjoy healthy eating, but don't tell anyone. But I feel like an adult most when I try to explain to my baby cousin, holding that teddy bear in her hand, that the world is full of sexists, racists, and idiots who should be thrown off the edge of this apparently flat sphere. And it is in that moment that I realize this house is my home. This body is my home, and actually house does not always equal home, but it does equal mortgage. And that equals scary, which equals confusing, which equals terrifying, which equals being an adult. Thank you. So, kind of going off the theme of growing up, did anyone here play an instrument when they were younger? Let's get a show of hands if you did. Oh, wow, quite a few people. Usually I only get like 1 or 2 people, so you will definitely relate to this poem, because when I was younger, I used to play piano, and I had a really sad moment a couple years ago where I have a digital piano, and like, it's kind of difficult to explain, but like the keys sunk into the piano so far that like when I tapped it, it didn't spring back up, and I tried to fix it, and it just did not work, and I kind of had to accept that my piano was broken and dead, which kind of broke my heart. So I wrote this poem called Ode to My Broken Piano. On the days that I do not love you, my love looks nothing like love. In fact, it looks quite not like the opposite, an almost soundless key, a half-working note pressed against my fingertips. I've always loved you. You've seen many a day of woe with me, but also seen tears fall in glee. The joy of playing the right note at just the right time to create that perfect symphony. You've seen broken friendships and puffy eyes become transformed into sweet melodies and lullabies which you'd sing softly to me. But it does still annoy me that you can't play E3, C5, or C3 anymore, because what am I meant to do about that? And my anger is something I cannot hide from you, because I can't hide anything from you. You know these fingers, these fingertips, a wealth of DNA that's been coiled around your black wrists and white fists for almost a decade. And I'm writing this as if you are dying, because you are kind of dying. You are breathing, but you are breaking. But it's taken you breaking to make me realize how whole you make me feel. And I will dream of those nights of our youth. Piano lessons every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. The sleepy cats on the living room mats in the teacher's home who believed that you and I were nothing more than an untold love story, a chanced encounter fated never to be finished. And it was, then, because I quit. But you were still there. You were the centerpiece of my living room, and if any of those kids come home again and try to play you with heavy palm presses instead of gentle finger kisses, let me tell you what I will do. I will cut them. Because I wanted to say, I love you. And I just wanted to say thank you so, so much for loving me too. Thank you. So this next poem is one that I wrote in partnership with an organization called Wise Thoughts, which are an East London-based charity that support LGBTQ+, there we go, people in the community, and it is called Diluted Ribena, and goes like this. I nod, and my she/they nods too. It comes with me everywhere. I'm the most uncomfortable when it decides to take a sick day, when it is a child pretending to skip school and tucks itself beneath the covers. I yank it out as I uncap the third bottle of blue hair dye, medicinal, bright as possible, I tell no one in particular. My shower spits up black strands snapped in half. In a crowded school somewhere, someone nods a they/them. And my she/they settles in my chest, my throat opening and closing like a forward slash, whispered and willed into a keyboard, tucked somewhere quietly into an Instagram bio. When I shake someone's hand, my she/they runs in perspiration. It stays hidden, tucked between the armpit and the shirt. I can't say I'm not jealous of those who don't turn into extremely diluted Ribena when someone asks them who they are. If someone nods a she/her back to my she/they, I watch the condensation run down the glass as I add an ice cube, a pint of water, an ocean. I am pale, to say the least. I once was not, to say the most. But my she/they has a habit of sitting only in the seats with the glass panels next to them on the tube. It's probably because I lean my head against it and my hips against the handle, my body a guillotine, a forward slash. Thank you. So this next poem is quite fun because I was given it as a challenge to write, and what I like to do is get people to guess what the 3 words were that I was given to try and combine to make into a poem. So at the end, if you want to participate and try and shout out the words and guess, feel free, but I'm not a comedian. I'm not going to pick you out of the crowd and say, you need to tell me what words I used or else you need to leave. So you can if you want, no pressure. So the poem is called White Bread, and it goes like this. When I was a child, and to be honest, even now, getting letters was so exciting. The doorbell ringing was a reminder that somewhere in Britain, or maybe the world, someone felt my correspondence so important, so necessary, that they did not ring me. They did not text me. They wrote my name atop that envelope. Each curve of the P, the flamboyant flick of the M, was carved on this envelope with the thought that I could speak for myself, parents removed. My tiny hands would clamp down on the envelope, too nervous to reveal the secrets it might contain in the living room, so I would run upstairs and ever so slowly would peel apart the top triangle from the bottom rectangle, like pulling apart two delicate pieces of white bread. But then I paused. I thought, if they really wanted to speak to me, why didn't they call me? Why didn't they text me? I imagined the postman a panda, lazily grazing on bamboo, the mouth opening and closing, like an envelope, opening and closing, opening and closing. Finally, its black eyes heavy with sleep would pause, open, turn to my letter, consider it, roll itself back over, and tuck itself back to bed. Despite my anger at this postman, though, I would open the letter to find it read, Dear owner of this bank account, the Royal Bank of Scotland will be deducting £10 from your account. Thank you for your continued patience during this recession. Sincerely, the Royal Bank of Scotland. And so I yelled, Dad, the white people are taking money from us again, passing him the envelope, and watched as the white bread crumbled in his hands. Thank you. So, does anyone want to have a go at guessing what the three words were? Feel free to just shout them out because I can't see everyone, so I can't really do a hands thing. If you want to, go ahead. No pressure. You're close. Oh, you're close. It's something to do with those two things. Oh, male was close. It's like how they get around. What, sorry? Courier. Kind of. So if... This is the fun of it, is that it's something really specific. Oh, you're close. Okay, so if I tell you it's two words and the first word is male. Royal Mail, that was it. So Royal Mail was one of them. So then we got two more. Oh, panda was one of them. Disappointment would have been a good one, but unfortunately that was not it. Panda, yeah, and then the third one. Bread. Yeah, bread, amazing, great, you guys are so good at this. It usually takes people a lot longer, I'm impressed. How are we doing on time? Great, so the next poem that I'm going to do is the one that I promised I would do at the start, about onion rings. And it is a short poem, but it is one of my favorites because it has quite a long-ish backstory to it. Because in 2019, I was lucky enough to do a semester abroad at uni in Hong Kong. If I say the words 2019 and Hong Kong, I feel like a lot of people might think that it was unlucky, but it actually taught me a lot despite being quite a turbulent time there politically. It was a turbulent time for me emotionally because I had these moments where I was kind of on my own and I had to really figure out what I was doing. And one time I had gone on kind of like a little self-care walk out and about on the town, and I was getting really hungry, and I was like, oh, at this point I don't care, like I don't want something local, I just want like a really shitty pizza from somewhere so that I can just eat and go home. And Google Maps, if you have ever been to Hong Kong, you will know that Google Maps does not work at all in Hong Kong. So it was sending me round in circles trying to find this pizza place, because essentially a lot of things in Hong Kong are in buildings. So you have to go in the lift and then go up to the right floor. Eventually I managed to find it, but I was so exhausted by the time I sat down. I was like, oh, I don't even care anymore. I was actually also quite anxious trying to find this place, and I was like, oh my God, my phone's on 5%. I'm never gonna find this pizza place, and I'm never gonna get home. But I managed to sit down and eat, and I ordered pizza and onion rings, and I was like, oh, let me try something. So, by the way, I do recommend this. It's a really good combo. So I put onion rings on top of my pizza and ate it, and it was actually so good. And I was like, oh my God, poem idea, let's go. So I took out my phone, and with my very greasy fingers, I just wrote this poem out on my phone. And it's a short one and goes like this. Mixing two sauces together and not having to worry about double dipping or sharing was when I realized being alone is freedom. Being alone is not lonely. Being alone is not sad. Being alone is not cry unless you want it to be. Being alone is not even being alone, but with you, yourself, your body. Being alone is fine. Great, so I think I have time for one more poem, which is also a short one, and I feel like it would be a really lovely way to close the show, because you have all been such a lovely, lovely audience. So just give yourself a big round of applause for being such a lovely and receptive audience. Thank you so much for being here today. And this poem is called Quiet Voice, and it goes like this. When time fades and the clocks melt away, to be where I am now would be best, beside no other name, place, or day. Together but alone is such compressed. Together is the place we shall be, isolated from all the rest. And though we hear the angered marching rain, here, the quiet of our voices is all that shall remain. Thank you. So this is something that's slightly self-indulgent, because this is like actually one of the biggest shows that I've done so far, and you have all been such a lovely audience, like I said, so thank you so much. And if it would be okay, I was wondering if we could take a picture together. Is that okay with everyone? Amazing. Okay, so let me get my camera set up. Great, okay, so there we go. Okay, so cannot work this. Okay, so I'll say 3, 2, 1, and then maybe if everyone can say poetry. Does that sound good? All right, so 3, 2, 1. Poetry. Amazing. Thank you guys so, so much for having me. Thank you.
PM, everybody. Thank you so much, PM. That was amazing. Really loved that.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And thank you, guys. Thank you.
Right, that was amazing, wasn't it? Lots more to come tonight. Before we take a break, just want to point this out to you. Tomorrow, we're going to have another event here at the Montgomery. It's called Our Journey Here. And you can come here for some free samosas and henna, and a cup of tea as well. And you can get to share your story. That's from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. tomorrow, right here at the Montgomery. We're going to have a short break. And then we're going to have Sarah Orola coming on stage to read out her poetry. So if you can go to the stalls, use the bathroom if you need to, and then be back here for 8. Thank you. Welcome back if you were here before, and to those who are just joining us, welcome to Migration Matters Festival, Night of Poetry, Prose and Performance. Thank you. So we've just had the amazing PM on stage. That was brilliant. We've got 2 more acts for tonight. Before we get into the next act, just to remind you that Migration Matters Festival is going on, and go to the website, see what else we've got lined up. But I would like to put out a plug. Sean Kuti will be performing in Sheffield on the 22nd of June. If you haven't yet got your ticket, please get one. Hey. And so this year, Migration Matters Festival is supporting some charities as always, and this year we're going to be supporting LAS Sheffield. You could donate to that. So LAS Sheffield is Lesbian Asylum Support Sheffield, and this year, unfortunately, one of the pioneers of that organization passed on, and so we're raising funds in support of them. She was a trans rights activist. Her name was Kate. So if you could support us, go to the website, or if there's a bucket at the store, please make a donation if you can. Would like to thank our funders as well this year. So our funders include the Arts Council of England, Evan Cornish Foundation, and of course Migration Matters Festival is now brought to you by Arts on the Run, which is a Sheffield-based organization. Big round of applause to them. Now, if you're from the Sheffield creative scene, the next act needs no introduction because she has been blowing up the poetry scene. And I mean blowing up. I first met Sarah about 3 or 4 years ago, just before the pandemic, and we were in the same poetry classes. Now, Sarah is part of the Good Chances Change the Word Poetry Collective, which I'm also a part of. And she's going to be blowing our minds tonight with amazing, amazing work. Hold on to your seats for Sarah Orola.
Hi, good evening, everyone. How's everyone doing tonight? Good? Yeah. My name is Sarah Folashade Iride Edith Arola. I come from a Guyanese mother and a Nigerian father, and that has really given me a big insight into like my culture, my identity, and who I am. And tonight I'm gonna share a bit of that with you. So my first piece is called Berbice Bacchanal. And now this is a bit about my childhood in Guyana, where I grew up. And I guess like just thinking back, it's vastly different to a childhood here in the UK, and I just wanted to capture that in a piece, so I'll share that with you now. Hello, hello, come quick, come quick. Man, is what happened? Does El Dorado go or ripe mango? Girl, well, it's how you expect me for know. Let me go and climb the tree. But wait. I remember, mommy tell we, don't climb the people them tree. Cheshire cat grinning, hop on quick, 2 wheels spinning, me want no licks. Faster, man, faster. Hop up the back step, sit upon the porch, full up we belly till we can't eat no more. Gaffing and liming. It's 6:15. Hustle, man, let me go inside before them blasted crickets start to sing. Berbice bustles under the dewy moonlight. and mosquito-infested waters. The burnt cow dung from the high sun at midday. Drowning in coconut water. Rastaman bust it open with he Aladdin cutlass. Jelly softly slips down my throat. Sardine-packed buses hobble down rickety back dams. All we come for lime. Y'all see that punny line top? The smoky red dust whirs and settles. Bacchanal begins. Thank you. So this next piece is actually, I guess, dedicated to my grandmother. She was the matriarch of our families. I think a lot of people can relate, their grandmothers especially, kind of hold the family together. And there's a core memory that I have with her when we were younger. She would always say to my sister and I that she was a sapodilla brown beauty, which is a fruit in Guyana. So yeah, it was inspired by that, and it's called Grandma's Hands. Her Cosry grandbabies weren't sapodilla brown. They were her tamarind chutney pride of Albertown. Sapodilla brown skin, token of beauty, soft as vanilla fudge, drown in her mauby. Sorrel drips from hibiscus-stained lips. Her cocoa butter kisses, sticky like molasses, sugarcane dream, Demerara River, sweet and mighty. Deep cocoa lines of grandma's hands map her journey from rich soil to concrete pavements. Jubilee line jungle she saunters through. Onyx jaguar, Amazon left behind. Doors will open at Stratford. The train terminates here. Thank you. So I'm part of a poetry collective here in Sheffield called Change the Word. And we just launched our recent anthology. So I just thought it'd be cool to share a piece that I wrote for this anthology. With me. It's a call and response. So every So for me, my hair is my identity, especially as a Black woman. We're always policed on how we should wear our hair in public, in professional settings. And I express myself a lot through my hair. So the next two pieces are about my experiences and how important hair is, especially for Black women. At the time of writing this poem, I had bright pink braids. So it reminded me of, we have this pastry in Guyana called Solara, and when you eat it, it leaves like a pinkish reddish hue on your fingers. So yeah, my hair reminded me of that at the time, so I was like, why not? And this piece is called Solara Crumbs. Solara? Yes, Auntie. Solara crumbs on your head? Yes, Auntie. But y'all, it's crazy, you crazy. Solara crumbs filter into train track tresses where rice granules once hid. Salmon talons grip 3 strands of 4C yarn to weave pride into my chala crown. Thank you. So this last piece is, I feel like as humans, as people, we always find the beauty in nature, regardless of how imperfect it shows up every day. We think the sky is beautiful, the trees, the plants, and we sometimes fail to see the beauty in our own imperfections. And as a woman in today's society, there's so many ideals and things that are, thrown at us on a daily basis. So I wanted to, look at, my imperfections and see it through the lens of nature and point out how beautiful we are as women. So this poem is specifically for all the women in the crowd tonight. It's called The Liberated Hoatzin, because I just feel that when you express yourself and live vicariously through yourself 110%, you're as free as a bird. Okay. The Liberated Hoatzin. Afro nest burrows by a periwinkle parakeet on my tender petunia scalp. Teal mosquito coil curls hatch at the nape of my neck. Fly from the coop to land in Regia's palm, where oceanic green valleys nestle, like the curvy caricatures of Yoruba women. I carry an S on my hip and bee-stung lips. Crooked map of skid marks paint a mahogany journey on my car's reap-stained skin. I, the daughter of colonialism, birthed from black water creeks under the beating sun, cheeks soft like mommy. I, the Caribbean breeze, shifting tectonic plates, form paradise. Thank you. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone at Migration Matters for making this happen, having me here tonight. I feel so honored. It's also an honor to be opening for the Lem Sisse. And I also want to say that if you want to know any more about my performances and things that I'm doing in Sheffield, about poetry workshops and things, you can follow me on Instagram at A Powerful Word. My name is Sarah Fulashade Iride Edith Arola. Thank you. Good night.
Sarah, everybody. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thanks, everybody, for that session. Yeah, so that was Sarah, and we're going to be having the next act in a bit. But before you go away, I'm looking for Stella from Safety. Where are you, Stella? All right, lovely. I'd like to introduce you to Stella from Safety. Safety is an organization in Sheffield that works to help develop necessary English language skills and help asylum seekers, refugees gain confidence. So if you would like to learn more about their work, see Stella over there. Thank you. Yeah, amazing work they do. Yep. Do you have any resources at the stalls as well? Okay, it's an amazing. Yeah, so see Stella over there. Yeah. We're going to be taking a break and then we'll be ready for the next big act. I'll see you in a moment. Oh, Sarah, that was amazing. Wherever you are, thank you very much. Represented Sheffield really well. And proud of you for opening tonight for the amazing broadcaster, author, poet, BAFTA-nominated this, that, the legend that will tell you all about himself when he comes on stage. But I have learned today that actually in Ethiopia, his name is not Lem. It's pronounced Lemon. I learned something, right? Yeah. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the author of My Name Is Why, Lemon Sisse.
It's so good to be here. My name is Lem Sisse, and I'm going to read from my book, My Name Is Why. You can cough all you want as well. It's all good. Just cough all you want. Yeah. Actually, I'm not going to talk. I talk too much. I write. And this poem's called My Name Is Why. This book is called My Name Is Why. And each section, each verse, each chapter starts with a verse of poetry. And this, at the beginning, is, I am the bull in the china shop with all my strength and will, as a storm smashed the teacups, I stood still. And then the preface is the preface. The preface. At 14, I tattooed the initials of what I thought was my name into my hand. The tattoo is still there, but it wasn't my name. It's a reminder that I've been somewhere that I should never have been. I was not who I thought I was. The authority knew this, but I didn't. The authority had been writing reports about me from the day I was born. My first footsteps were followed by the click, clack, clack of a typewriter. The boy is walking. My first words were recorded. Click, clack, clack. The boy has learned to talk. Fingers were poised above a typewriter, waiting for whatever happened next. The boy is adapting. Paper zipped from typewriters and into files, and the files slipped into folders under the S section of a tall metal filing cabinet. For 18 years, this process repeated over and over again. Click, clack, clack, clack. Secret meetings were held. The folders were taken out and placed on tables, surrounded by men and women of the authority. Decisions were made. Put him here, put him there. Shall we try drugs? Try this, try that. After 18 years of experimentation, the authority threw me out. It locked the doors securely behind me and hid the files in a data company called the Iron Mountain. So I wrote the authority, and I hand-delivered the letter. And the reply informed me that I had to write to customer services. I was a customer now. So I wrote to customer services, and customer services replied to say they were not permitted to release the files. The authority placed me with incapable foster parents. It imprisoned me. It moved me from institution to institution. And yet now, at 18 years old, I had no memory, I had no witnesses, no family. In 2015, following a 30-year campaign to get my records, the chief executive of Wigan Council wrote me, she had them. Within a few months, I received 4 thick folders of documents marked A, B, C, and D. click, clack, clack. On reading them, I knew. I took the authority to court. How does a government steal its child? How does a government steal a child and then imprison him? Secret. This story is how. So what I did is I put the files into the book, and they are the memory of my first 18 years in my life. And I should say that I took the government to court in 2015 for stealing my family, for changing my name, for imprisoning me as a child, for stealing my name, and then etc. And they settled out of court in 2018, and wrote me a letter of apology, and then I immediately wrote this book using those files, which was 2019, August of 2019, and by September 2019, it was a Sunday Times #1 bestseller. Now, if I wanted to be a Sunday Times #1 bestseller, believe me, I would not have been a poet. So I'm saying that because it's funny how the story has found its place. When I began as a poet at 18 years of age, performed here with the Bundu Boys a couple of times. Some of you will remember them. Gigs like this, Migration Matters kind of vibe gigs. But on various places, I've performed all over Sheffield. Over the years, wrote a play for the Lyceum, etc. Lots of things that you won't know, because poets, we do get around. We do get around, and I have been around performing up and down the country. But I knew that every single thing that I did would be an acknowledgement of everything that I didn't have: a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, a grandparent. At 18 years of age, I didn't know anybody that knew me for longer than a year. So I knew that as I became successful as a poet at 21 years of age, the Guardian newspaper did a double-page spread on me and said, Lemsisay has success written all over his forehead. But I knew that the more I was seen, the more evident it would be that I didn't have anybody. And therefore the growth of acknowledgement for people to say, oh, you're successful, the more I would feel I would know that I wasn't. And I would know because of the emptiness of the echo, the nothingness that I had. At 18, I didn't know anybody who knew me for longer than a year. Therefore, by the time that Guardian newspaper article, I didn't know anybody who knew me for longer than 2 years, 3 years. And I knew that because I was the witness to my own story. Sounds crazy to you, doesn't it? I proved it. I proved what they did to me. But I couldn't. So I wrote poetry, traveled the world, and it didn't get easier the more I was seen. I don't mean I had a cousin that I wasn't talking to. I don't mean that. I don't mean that I had a parent who was bad to me and that I wasn't talking. I had nobody. Nobody. It's almost unimaginable that could happen. Here's the evidence. So I'm not going to talk anymore. That's enough talking because you can. It's here. And so I put the files into the. And people would say to me, they'd say, "Yeah, but you know what, Lem? Family isn't. Family is difficult. Family. You're lucky. You know what I mean? You're actually lucky. Let's be honest, Lem. You are doing better than all of us. Okay? Little shit. Oh, I've got no family. But the point is." And then the people would say, but friends are the family that you, what's that thing? Friends are the family that you choose, yeah. But you choose, you learn how to make friends based on the relationships that you form within your family. So in your family, you might decide that you don't want to be like that. So you're like, I know how to make friends, and it's not what's going on here. So you have a place to aggregate, you have a place to make your decisions by, and you go out there and you make them. I didn't have a family. The one consistent nature of my childhood was that there was nobody that stayed along for longer than a couple of years. So I put the files in the book, and there's the first picture of me that I saw as a baby. Can you see that? I mean, I would steal that baby, you know what I mean? You can kind of understand why they would do it, you know, when you see it, you're like, oh, maybe a little bit of baby theft is not such a bad thing. My mum came to this country in the 1970s, 60s, and she found us, that was such a lame joke, Lem, and she found herself pregnant, and like women did. And in the 60s, if you were pregnant and a woman and you weren't with a husband, you were sort of seen as like an estrogen terrorist. Do you know what I mean? On the high street, that you would sort of like explode, you know, and just infect all these other people who would then become estrogen terrorists themselves. And sort of like the entire of society and church would dismantle amongst that much flood of estrogen just pouring down the high street, robbing people of their moral standing, ruining the familial structure, which was oh so perfect in the 60s. So they set up around this country, it's kind of a primitive thing to do, but they set up these mother and baby homes where these women would be locked in, and well, they weren't locked in, and they had to sign these adoption papers when they were at their most vulnerable. You know it from Philomena, the film, and the Magdalene libraries, all things that we're now more aware of. And so my mum was sent to one of those, and the idea was that the nuns make you feel guilty for being pregnant. By the way, they transported this all over the world, India, Africa. There weren't children's homes in India or Africa before they put them there to get those children adopted by people in, oh my God. Wait, which came first? Was it the children's home, or was it the... And there was a real system. This is the child, this is the one in need, this is where we'll take him, this is where you sign. We need your parents to be dead. We need you to agree to this. So anyway, that's. I'm sorry, I'm talking about the international story there. No, what I meant to talk about, what was happening here, where it started. So what happened there was that you get. It's counter to the narratives that we've understood all of our lives, isn't it? So anyway, what happens here is you get the woman to sign the adoption papers while she's at her most vulnerable. She feels guilt. That's what the nuns asked her to feel when she was in the mother and baby home. And the social worker does the administrative side, which is get her to sign the adoption papers. Her mother and father aren't there. She's there on her own. She's made to sweep the floors, etc., etc. This was happening to the British. That's what they did to themselves. My mum just happened to land in the middle of that and be sent from her school in Oxford, Berkshire, to the north of England, into this mother and baby home. And she was asked to sign the adoption papers, and she said no. She spoke Italian, English, and Amharic. She had no intention of staying here, and she didn't. Ethiopia has never been colonized, unlike England. It was 1066. and so didn't have any relativity to some of the idea of victimhood and etc. So just like pretty much like the English, you know what I mean? Like Brexit. The Ethiopians didn't really see themselves as African. You know, they were Ethiopians. Anyway, it's actually true. So anyway, my mum came over here because you got a queen, we got a king, to study. I swear to God, the Emperor Haile Selassie, the model of that structure. Loved the queen. And she came here. She found herself pregnant, was put into a mother of baby home, wouldn't sign the adoption papers, and the social worker gave me to foster parents and said, treat this as an adoption, we'll get her to sign the adoption papers, the child's name is Norman. That's the only thing, your child's name's got to be Norman. And the foster parents wanted to call me Mark after Mark in the Bible because they didn't want to foster me. God had told them to foster me, you see. They prayed to God, and so God had told them to do that, and that's why they did that, which is beautiful. And this isn't anti-God. So they did that, and the social worker said to the foster parents, his name's Norman, yeah, I've said that. They wanted to call me Mark, and their last name was Greenwood, and so that was it. My name was Norman Mark Greenwood, and they were my mum and dad forever. And all I knew is that my birth mother was an evil woman who wouldn't sign the adoption papers. I should be reading from the book, but I've got to tell you, it's the easiest narrative to believe. The easiest narrative to believe for you lot upstairs. All right? You thought I was ignoring you. I'm not. I don't know why I'm talking like this. This is the little man who's inside me. Anyway, she wouldn't sign the adoption papers. They gave me to them, and they were my mum and dad forever, and that's all I knew. That's all I knew. And I had an uncle and an auntie, you know, a full family lot, and they were my mum and dad forever. So what I've done here is I've written the files. I've published the files, and they tell me what happened. And I should tell you now that at 12 years of age, they put me into care and said that they'd never speak to me again, never visit me, and they never did. Chapter 4, raise me with sunrise, bathe me in light, wash all the shadows that fell from the night. I developed a sense that there was something wrong with me around the time I began attending junior school with junior school. R.L. Hughes was my first school. It was straight up at the top of Osborne Road. We'd normally walk with Mum when she could take us, but later I reached the age when I could walk on my own with my brother. I liked the exact curvature of the earth. The school grounds, the green grass went on forever, and the football field, and the running track, and the neat 1960s buildings, and I preferred it to home. There was less static in the air. Mr. Graves was the head teacher, headmaster. He entered the hall each morning and stood near the monkey bars with his arms behind his back. They said he was an officer in the army. The music teacher sat in front of the piano. Mr. Graves gave a solemn nod, and the pianist would begin with the prelude while peering over her glasses, and then we would sing the song we also sang at church. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. I looked at my head teacher in awe. This is from the school report. It's printed exactly as it was in the report. It's a photocopy. It's from the social worker. After the school holidays, Christopher will be starting at the same school, and it will be interesting to see what happens, because Norman does not like Christopher to be better at him at anything. So this could possibly spurt Norman on to effort, or, on the other hand, he may give up if he feels that Christopher, his brother, is beating him. Birth mother to my parents. I hadn't realized at any point that none of what I have told you so far is true. Christopher was their natural child, and I wasn't a happy child. I was a deceitful one. I was causing problems for everyone. It must be true. It must be true. These are the words of Mr. Graves from the Social Workers Report of January 1976. Spoke to Mr. Graves several times on the phone and eventually visited the school. He felt that Norman's successes were too many for Chris to cope with. Went on to talk about another placement for Norman without any consideration of how the boy might feel. I put it to him that it was the only home the boy had known. I told him that another placement was out of the question and went on to inform him of what I had discussed with the foster parents themselves. We talked about specific incidents in the school when Norman's behavior had been inappropriately rewarded. He is never going to learn to cope with disapproval if approval is all he is being exposed to. The boy is going to meet with negative attitudes being unreasonably displayed to him at some time or other, and one wonders how he will cope with this when he is entirely unused to it. Spoke to Norman's class teacher. It was obvious that the boy has a very special place in this school. Teaching staff, domestic staff give him preferential treatment. Norman has to experience more realistic handling, and attitudes towards him have to undergo a change but not reject him. Headmaster will keep in touch about both children. Visit to foster home, Norman seen. I love life. I love life. I love my brother. Christopher was 8. I love school. I loved him. I showed my love for him by punching him. We had the same rivalry most brothers have. We fought with unbridled determination the way brothers do. We wrestled. We sweated until one of us, invariably Christopher, would burst into tears. Catherine and David had no children when they took me. Christopher was their firstborn, but I was their first. I was the eldest. I loved my town. I loved my family. I loved the sibling rivalry. I loved the market, the flower park, the big park, the books, the church, my friends. The head teacher suggesting to the social worker that I be moved for the sake of Christopher couldn't have happened in isolation. Norman's successes were too many. How could a child's successes be too many? The social worker said, Norman doesn't like Christopher beating him. Of course he doesn't. He's my brother. Something was at play, something I didn't understand. Norman's behavior had been inappropriately rewarded. He's never going to learn to cope with disapproval if approval is all he is being exposed to. This inclines me to think that my foster parents must have spoken to the head teacher prior to his speaking to the social worker, as there's no counter-narrative in the files. All I can tell you is what my parents told me, that my mum was my mum forever and was a nurse, and my dad was my dad for a teacher, and my brother and my sister were my brother and sister, and this was our town. But I couldn't help giving my brother a Chinese burn, because that's what brothers do. Chapter 5, smouldering embers in the sky above. Anger is an expression in search of love. 28th of the 7th, 75, Social Workers Report. I called to see Norman today, his family just having returned from their holiday in Scotland. Mrs. Greenwood was upset. It seems that just this morning, Norman repeated what he had been doing most mornings while on holiday. He is getting up in the early hours and eating sweet foods, particularly biscuits. He's eaten as many as 2 packets. Norman says he is sorry for his behavior, but cannot promise not to do it again. 8 years old I was, for the record. I did steal biscuits, but not 2 whole packs, and this exaggeration would come back to haunt me. What I did was this. I stole biscuits from the biscuit tin, and then I rearranged them in the tin in a stacked roof column system to hide the fact that I had stolen them. Genius. One holiday in Scotland at my granddad's home, the family left me in the cottage as punishment for lying about stealing some cake. Sarah, Christopher, brother, sister, David and Catherine walked down the hill to Lochimver. I thought I'd been locked in my room, but the door was open. I sobbed my way downstairs. The rich smell of silver birchwood from the embers of the fire filled the front room. Wiping tears from my face, I saw on the table a half-cut ginger cake. The tears evaporated. Replaced by butterflies in my stomach, maybe I can have a piece. I thought, if I cut it in exactly the same way as it was already cut, then no one will notice. Genius. And so I did. McCavity was much cleverer than that. The cake tasted so good that I figured one more slice wouldn't do any harm. There were no witnesses, but then there was only one suspect. It tasted so good, so I did it again. To this day, I just don't know why I got into this habit of stealing biscuits and bits of cake, but I did, and they told me I was devious. The problem was that my first instinct was to say, I didn't steal the cake. I hadn't considered that the reason that they'd left me in the cottage in the first place was with cake on the table downstairs was a trap. Still, I denied that I'd stolen the cake. McCavity would have had more guile and more style. Soon enough, after another hour in the bedroom, I realized that I had to admit to taking the cake. What I didn't realize was that the lies worried them. This habit of stealing the cake was the crack in the dam, they said. There was something bad in me, they said. Something I didn't understand, they said. Don't you look at me with those big brown eyes, was the strange refrain my mum would shout at me. I didn't understand what she saw. If I argued that I didn't know what she saw, then would I be lying? How could I see what she and my foster father saw? Back at home, the front room is where I was punished. Same place we entertained visitors, same place the books were, same place the social worker would sit. The leather sofa was polished to perfection and smelled of pledge. Stealing cake and lying about it was an indication that the devil was working inside of me. The front room was where I was caned. I loved the normal stuff. The middle room, where we mostly lived and watched the Clangers and Crackerjack on the TV. The files tell a different story, though, a story narrated by my foster parents, filtered by the social worker. Within 3 years, it will be reported that I threatened to kill the entire family except for baby Helen. Now, we're going to do a Q&A after this, and you can ask me a question about that, because it's kind of biblical, isn't it? I will kill you, except for the baby. And the exaggeration of the biscuits. So anyway, those are the reasons that they put me into care forever, and I never saw them. They never visited me, and I lost everybody. Brothers, sister, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, granddad, great-granddads, great-grandma, town, village, school. I was wiped. And nobody explained anything to me. So I just went into the care system, and then I was something that had to be held in different institutions. And by the way, the town around me, we were the bad kids. So I went into an institution where everybody around me thought that we were the bad kids, where my foster parents had said that there was something bad in me. So you might ask yourself, why did they do this? How could this be, that's exactly the question I asked myself. It must be my fault. That's what I believed when I was in care. It was my fault, and it must be my fault. Couldn't understand what it was, but it was my fault, and the devil was inside of me, and I needed to make that right. So I went into care, 12 years of age, 4 different children's homes. Final one was a virtual prison. Staff changed every 4 hours. Kids came in and out anyway. So the memory of me disappeared. I became invisible in plain sight. The best example of that is I asked lots of staff, I would ask them, why do you do this job? And they'd say, I love children. They never, in all of my time in the care system, said that in first person. So it was easy to love children, but nobody said, I love you. And that's very, very different. And that means that I could disappear from them and they wouldn't be calling me. I could go to the next children's home and that staff member will not call me. So that to me is not love, but I'm not saying it's bad. Because the people who need the most support in the care system are the staff, because they're there longest. They become most institutionalized. They're the ones who have their instincts stolen from them on many occasions. And they need support and social workers. There's a prejudice in society against them and against children in care for the simple reason that we are living, walking proof that things can fall apart, and families hate to admit to that. Anyway, I'm going to read you one more chapter. Are you okay, by the way? I know you're looking at me thinking, I just came for Migration Matters, Lem. I didn't... Okay, so let's be kind to ourselves. But I'm going to read you this because we form relationships with our parents as we grow. We start to understand a bit about them. Possibly, if we can grow empathy in ourselves. I mean, one of the great things about families is that you never have to forgive your parents. You know what I mean? You never have to forgive them. You can get married on that. Do you know what I mean? You can build a house on that resentment. You know, why would you forgive them? You know, you can go to university on that resentment. Oh, look at me, I've got a car, you bastards. I have children. You can give birth to children on that resentment. Look at my child. My child I've given to my child. You will never get to me. Why would you forgive them? You know. And then when your child starts to, you tell your child off and your child's like, I hate you! And you're like, oh my God, you're going to be in therapy over this. And you think to yourself, I haven't done anything. You didn't say thank you. I know, but I was just appreciating you physically without saying it. But when you realize that, you don't call your parents up to say, oh, look, I'm really sorry. I've had this resentment against you for like 30 years. And now I'm seeing my child build a resentment against me. And I think I kind of understand you a little bit more. And I'm really sorry because I've built a house on this resentment and I feel a bit guilty now. So could you forgive me? No, you don't do that. You're waiting for them to say sorry to you. You are, you'll take, and they're like lied out, just about to die, and you're like, go on, say it! And they're like, they're like, they look at you, milky-eyed. And you're like, you bastard! You didn't say sorry! And now you've just got you and your own resentment to live with, which is really, really, it's not a good look. You can't, just... They're dead bastards. You can't do that. You know what I mean? It doesn't look good. I know there's one of you thinking, Lem, you're out of order. You're out of order because I'm not forgiving them for what they did to me. Yes, well, one of the forgiveness is such a powerful thing, and it's not the purview of religion. It's like a very human kind of possibility. I didn't realize when I was forgiving my foster parents that I was forgiving myself, actually. And I didn't realize. I used to be like every relationship, every kind of, whatever that relationship is. There would come a moment, because you get close to me, you get close to me, you're going to get to it. There'd become a moment where I'd be like, I need to introduce you to the dead bear. And then I'd be like, I'd open the door and there'd be this mangy bear with like flies coming out of its eyes. Be like, this is my dead bear. I carry it with me everywhere. If you can accept my dead bear and me, we have a deal. And anyway, when I forgave, there was no dead bear, which was nice. Because it's really difficult when you're getting close to somebody. You're like, oh, God, I'm going to have to, at one point, introduce them to the dead freaking bear. You do all kinds of stuff to stop. Please don't get close to me because it stinks. It stinks. And like every now and again, the person who's in a relationship with you, they'll see a fly. And you'll be like, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. And whoever you're in a relationship with will squint. It's a little voice in you going, did they see? No, they didn't see. Okay. I know there's one of you thinking, I had no idea what he's talking. He's talking about My Name Is Why, and then he starts banging on about a dead bear. I'm going to read you this last chapter. So I left them at 12 years of age, and so I've never formed a relationship with them from 12. Okay, so I had to go back into my memory to find out. Firstly, after stopping thinking it was me, I had to then think about what was it, but not through having a relationship with them. When I forgave my foster mum, it was only a few years ago, and she said to me, she said, oh God, you know, it's not been easy for me. And I said to her, do you think that I don't know that? Do you think that I've not thought about this? In lieu of having any family on all of the birthdays and Christmases that I spent alone with no cards from anybody who's known me since I was a child. Every birthday, every Christmas, weekends, holidays, Father's Days, Mother's Days, holidays. Chapter 7. Dawn is awake for dusk. Light will find what it must. I've just got to say to you this before I carry on. This is theatre. This is where truth happens. This is art. That's where truth happens. That's why we know about Philomena through Steve's work. That's why we know about the Magdalene libraries. It's La Magdalene laundries. Even though that's one image of them, they were here. The mother and baby homes. It's through writers and artists and poets and singer-songwriters, just like in the 60s when they spoke about the war, or the war poets from the First or the Second World War who came back to tell how it really was. And politics wanted to say it was one way, and the writers said, no, it's not, it's this way. You know, art is such an important part of translating, like an X-ray, the human experience. Chapter 7, dawn is awake for dusk. Light will find what it must. What will be, and thus shadows speak for us. The journey to Winnick became an often repeated one throughout my childhood. Dad always stayed in the car when we got there. He stayed with Sarah because Sarah was too young. Winnick was a sprawling red brick institution set in manicured greenery. It was the picture of order and quietude, covering up the secrets and lies. Mum, me, and Chris walked through the front door to an archway, and after Mum signed a register, we stepped into the wide tiled corridor of the asylum. It smelled of vomit, bleach, Savlon, and urine. Our footsteps were louder here and followed by a sharp echo. Haunting moans pealed into the air as we stepped onwards. A nurse appeared as if from nowhere and rushed past us. Chris was chewing his lip and getting paler and paler. He developed a nervous habit of sucking his upper lip, leaving it dry and chapped. Our long journey in this other world led to a public room, a cove with winged armchairs with women in them. I scanned the room slowly and I noticed that none of the women were right. They were holding their heads all wrong. They were strange, dribbling creatures. Then Mum spotted one of them, stepped quietly over to her. The woman had an overhang to her mouth, wolf-like, dribbling, hair like a nest. And she was rocking backwards and forwards. A twisted arm held out like a snapped twig. There was a familiar shape to her eyes. "This is Auntie," Mum said. "Say hello to your Auntie." I pulled myself together. "Hello, Auntie," I said. I liked her, and she liked me. And she liked me. I could see a twinkle in her twisted, slow eye as her bent head rocked back and forward and her twisted elbow pushed out a clawed hand towards me and brushed my cheek. She couldn't speak, but her grunts were enough for me to know. Chris twitched and managed to mumble. Mum took out a hanky and lovingly wiped drool from Auntie's mouth and chin. And how long did we spend there? Watching her rocking back. And I knew instinctively not to ask questions as we headed off. Mum visited her twin regularly, sometimes alone, sometimes with us. My auntie had been like that from birth. And as children have a sense for these things, I realised that no one mentioned her, not Grandma, her mum, or my mum, her sister. My grandmother, Phyllis Munro, never visited her daughter with Mum and us. I wonder, does Catherine, Mum, does she believe that she took away what her sister needed? What a thought. People can be cruel to themselves. People can be cruel to each other. Was my mum born in shock that she had survived? Did she blame herself? Did her mother blame her? Was Catherine living with a constant sense that she was not good enough because she had taken the air from her sister? Well, she would do everything to prove otherwise. She would foster a coloured baby and show her mother, who was a foster parent too, that she was good, in spite of what she'd done to her sister inside her mother's womb. I honestly believe that if my mum could have changed places with her sister in the asylum, then she would. Nature may be cruel, but it's honest. It's not the doings of devil or God. My auntie hadn't done anything wrong. Her sister hadn't done anything wrong. Her mother hadn't done anything wrong. This was not a curse for sins. If they could all let themselves see that this is the beauty of nature. My mother's twin sister was beautiful. She was as beautiful as any catwalk model, her mind as relevant as Alice Walker's, and it's not my aunt who has the problem. It's my grandmother who couldn't look at her and whose subsequent hatred of her other daughter, my mother, caused my mother's inescapable feeling that she didn't deserve to be alive. No Christmases and no birthdays would rid my mother of the feeling that her twin sister had a birthday and a Christmas too. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small. There were two other sisters, Ruth and Sue, and a brother called Alec, my uncles and aunts. And I think Sue was the adopted one. Ruth's portrait hung in my grandmother's front room above the fireplace, and it hurt my mother, not because she would take anything away from Ruth, her sister. It was because my mother felt that her picture would never be on the wall because it would remind her mother of her other daughter, the one we visited. I was born into a laburnum tree family with its beauteous bloom and its poisonous seeds. I saw Grandma at least once a week, and I loved her to bits. Maybe she did love Catherine Greenwood, the twin who survived. Maybe she loved her so much that she couldn't show it, because to show it would have made her feel that she loved her daughter in the asylum less. Maybe Catherine was her favourite, the one she fought for, the one who survived. She was the first, but Catherine never felt it. And consequently found love difficult to give and even more difficult to receive. Grandma Munro was always cutting her down to size. The disappointment inside Mum deepened. I guess it explained her begrudging discontentment with others. The parent and daughter reinforced each other's dysfunctional behavior like rutting stags. Caught in each other's antlers. In fact, all they wanted of each other was love. This was the great rift. Catherine was the first daughter, and Phyllis was the first mother, and the other daughter was in the asylum. This is how anger is stoked. Bitterness rots the vessel that carries it. None of this is in the files. Oh, Grandma was a registered foster carer with the local council, like her daughter. Rings. I never saw any other foster children there at Grandma's. The only time I knew of a foster child being at her house was when I was sent there. Duncan Munro, Grandad, was an ex-whiskey drinking, motorbike riding maverick from Lochinver in the Highlands. We holidayed there at every opportunity. Before settling down with Grandma, Grandad would often get mad drunk in Lochinver, jump on his motorbike and ride up the treacherous cliff edges like a hurricane. And now and again, I would catch glimpses of that wild Highlander. He was a rugged left-wing free spirit, and he'd ended up in Bryn, Wigan, of all places. And there was something about me being other and him being other that gently brought us together amongst the nodding tomato plants of his greenhouse. And I liked nothing more than standing there, clearing away weeds while he clipped the tomatoes and told me stories. From 7 to 12, Mum would send me to stay alone at my grandparents'. Grandma made me mop the floors, polish the furniture, sweep the yard. I can't remember any of my brothers and sisters being sent away. It's only at the time of writing that I realized it was just me. I didn't mind. I enjoyed the chores. My grandma was so overweight it would eventually kill her. She ruled over my mother with a rapier tongue and a cynical, withering look which could reduce Mum to tears. Grandma Munro, the queen of the chessboard, surveyed the world like its aim was to take her out. There wasn't space for grey areas anymore. There was a pathological need to be right about things. There was little time for reflection. There was good and bad and right and wrong and heaven and hell and God and the devil, and all of this clarity would belie the murkiness. I can still hear the emptiness of the school song mocking and echoing down the corridors of the asylum. All things bright and beautiful, all creatures great and small, all things wise and wonderful, the Lord God made them all. Was there something cruel in this family? A strong undercurrent threatening to drag me out into the wide ocean? Was there something about this family that locks its damaged children into places they can't be seen and then punishes itself for the guilt it feels? Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks. Now, there's a lot in that. There's a lot in there. Actually, I'm not going to make a joke about it. Thanks, folks. Thanks for allowing me to read, and thanks for being with me as I read. And I got to say that I'm okay. That's really important. That's really important. That's very important for you to know that. That's very important for you to know that. And do you have any questions? I know that's a strange thing to ask after sharing that story in that way with you, but that's part of one of the reasons I was here. Is I should have said that at the beginning, actually. Sorry about that. I should have said later you'll be able to ask me a question, and I didn't. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask me? Sorry. Yes. I'll forget it. No. Does anybody else have... Sorry, that was a cheap... Yes. Yes, registered foster parents and have been for 47 years. That tells you some good stuff, right? Yes. Yeah. He said, my story resonates, and there is a child in their life, and they're still fighting for the child with the local council. He's 25 now. Yes. Yes. Yeah, oh no, they're always redacted. Look, most people who ask, so the question is like, when I got my files, were they redacted, were they complete? Normally, when you get your files back, they're redacted. And normally, what happens when you ask for your files, especially if you're from my generation, you're often told that they've been lost, etc., etc. This is a way of, this is because every time you get your files, the council has to employ a lawyer to go through them to redact. So it costs money every time you ask for the files, which is why, I believe anyway, across the country over the past 25 years, people have consistently said to me, my files have been lost, my files have been this, that, and the other. And then if you carry on pushing that door, you'll find that, oh, they're fine. I made a Radio 4 documentary trying to get my files and didn't get them at the end of it. Okay, that was in 2005 or 10. Yeah, and went to Wigan, you know, and then in 2018 I got them because I didn't stop, you know. I didn't stop talking about it. Yeah. Yeah.
You've had a good relationship with your foster family. How would you have felt if you'd been with them and had a good relationship with them, and then the local authority decided that they would take you away without you wanting to?
Yeah, I get it. I understand. Have you read the independent review into children's social care that was done by Josh McAllister? It's the most radical review of children's social care in my lifetime. It's not going to get implemented, but it's incredible, and it came out last week. And he speaks very much about how you can find yourself you can find yourself in the situation that you're finding yourself in. Although I've got to say also that I do believe that social workers are doing the best they can with what they've got. There will be decisions, there will be mistakes made. And you know what? That's the same as families. Families make mistakes as well. Therefore, social workers have to be allowed to make mistakes as well. They also have to make decisions sometimes that we disagree with. They, you know, and you have to just keep fighting. I'm trying to counter what is a narrative in society, which is that children in care are bad and social workers are bad, and this works in favour of the abusive parents and the abusive people in our society, of which there is more than we actually would actually admit. They're in basically most of our families at some point or other, if you go back far enough. Sorry to say that, but it's not untrue. I know. I do often think that social workers are not allowed to act on their own instinct. I also think that budgets come into this, which is why I talk about it, because the more the public are aware of it, the more it'll become a vote winner, the more pressure that will put onto the social workers, and I'm sorry for what you're going through. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. Yes. Did I ever have the chance to meet my biological mother and family? My mother was. My mother went back to Ethiopia and married the vice ministers to finance under the Emperor Haile Selassie. My father was a pilot for Ethiopian Airlines, and if you saw an interview I did with Frank Skinner on Sky News the other day, not Sky News, on Sky Arts, he's got this chat show. It's still on. He shows for the first time a picture of my father at the top of some of the my father was a pilot. Have I said that? My father was a pilot for Ethiopian Airlines. It shows him at the top of air stairs, you know, those stairs that go up to a plane, but there's no plane on the end of it. There's just my father and one of the Emperor Haile Selassie's lions looking out. And if you Google my father's name, my father, you will see that picture of him. I wouldn't have minded if my parents were bin men and hairdresser. I don't care. Actually, no, I don't want to. Bin man and cleaner. I don't care. In fact, the cleaners were the ones who we got on with in the children's homes. They saw everything, and they should have been paid more because they did more work than they were actually paid to do in counselling us. Yeah, so I did meet my mum, and then I made my dad. I made a documentary with the BBC in 1995 called Internal Flight, where I went out to find my father, and I went to the airline, etc., etc. And my mother now lives in New York. My father died in a plane crash in '74. My mother lives in New York on Roosevelt Island. Her children went to international schools in France called L'École des Roches, with like ministers' sons from all different kind of governments around the world. Including France. So when I was glue sniffing in the children's homes at 13 years of age under the bed, they were having horse riding lessons as extracurricular activity at their school. The revolution happened in Ethiopia in 1974. My mother married the vice minister. He was jailed. She had to flee the country. She was literally left carrying the baby. It's really easy, isn't it? We want to look to apportion blame. Yes. What saved me? This is a really good question. It's a lifelong project, right? For any of us? For any of us. There isn't this arrival moment. I have to look after myself. I'm still the guy. Basically, I have good birthdays now, but only now. You know, like my relationship to my birthday is that it is a time of loss. And I mean from young, you know, so those are the formative. That's what family is. It's just a group of people saying, you are this now. And you can say, I'm not that then. And just the argument is what solidifies the memory. Why would you forgive? You know, the actual falling out is part of what can position you in the world. There are people who say, I've left my family, I'm now independent. You're not. You're utterly dependent on a point of reference to tell you what you're independent from. You need that to be there, to be independent from it. And I didn't have that. And so that's why I know how important that was. How important the argument was. I didn't have the argument. So we're all of us a lifelong project, right? You know, so one day at a time. This poem how do you do it, said night, how do you wake and shine? I keep it simple, said light, one day at a time. So I have to keep reminding myself of trying to be in the present and all of that palaver. And actually, it's been quite a selfish life. Because people who have children and families, they don't share secrets. What's that saying? They let sleeping dogs lie. Because sometimes not telling the story is the best thing for the story. Do you know what I mean? Not everything has to be thrown out like this in books. You get people like me who have to do it. You'll get one child who wakes up one day and says, I've got to go back. I've got to find out what's going on in this family. And everybody else in the family is like, no! Because they're going to make mistakes. Like, please, sit down. So, yeah. Yes. Sorry, so I don't have an answer to that. But I'll tell you what. No, it's a great question. It's a great question. But I'll tell you. Like people say, like I write poetry, right? I did a program on Channel 4, Super Kids, where I got some young people who were in care and got them to write poetry, etc., etc. That's not the answer, right? The arts is not the answer. You know, any of you know who've got children, if you can, you'll get them to everything. Violin, blah, blah. If you can afford, you sit outside the swimming baths every freaking Sunday, Saturday, whatever. Coming back, oh, I've had a great time. Oh, I'm cold. I need some new kit. The price has gone up for water. I don't know, and you'll give it as best as you can. You give it, you sit outside the swimming pool. You had a good time, oh great, and it's great. And then that child, I mean, I'm hamming it up, but that child will come home and be like, I don't want to swim anymore. I want to play football. That's it. All that you've done is like, I want to play football. I like stamps. You don't have to wear swimming trunks with stamps. I want stamps. So what I'm trying to say is that you get them to, and you kind of must hope that they just get one thing. They get one thing where something in them just you see something, you're like, oh, that's that thing. There's something in you when you do physics, when you do science. What is it? Something that you see in your child. This tendrils of them go around this subject matter. I found mine in poetry, and I think a child in care should have all the resources of the council to test everything. They should have the swimming baths. They should have the violin lessons. I think the care system should be so good that middle-class parents are trying to put their children into care, right? Think about that. And social workers have to have conferences to stop them doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we stop the middle class? So, and I'm serious about that. So I think one of the things that maybe has got me through somehow is that finding the thing that I love. And by the way, creativity is not the monopoly of artists. Okay, so a young boy who loves, I'm going to be cliched here, but who loves fixing cars or wants to know about how to fix, and then feels like he's something about him, just when he gets a car engine, it's just something happens, you know, or he wants to cut hair, and when he's a hairdresser, he just feels at home, you know, or something, whatever it is. He might not know it himself, but you see it. You see, it's that kind of care and attention to detail that I want from a care system, so that child can find what it is that they love, possibly. And you know what? Most children don't. You know what I mean? They don't. They go into education, and that's fair enough. And they go out on a Saturday night in town, and they're happy. Right? You get married, you get da-da-da-da-da. Got to stop now, okay. What she said is, shut the up. She didn't say that. Sorry, folks. One more question. Yes. By the way, this is the last question. It better be good, okay? This question, everybody in here has got to think to themselves, oh my God, that question was the best. Everybody in here has got to think to themselves, do you know what? I wouldn't have thought of that, but that is the question that needed to be asked. There's got to be people, when you ask this question, there's got to be people crying with sort of recognition. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, please, the question. She's adopted and she resonated with a lot of what I said. Get in! Yeah. You run an organization called Adopted Futures. It's going downhill now, this. Yeah. And yes. Yes. Yeah, good. Yeah. Yes. I do think that adoption is the... She literally went like that. She honestly did. She went, can I just... Oh, it was great. Yes, I did, yeah. Yes. 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 Yes.
How do you change the narrative? Because, or how are you working to kind of change that narrative? Because my stuff is sometimes, and I'm a bit like frustrated. So I just want to, it's a bit of a...
Okay, so the question is, how do I work with that narrative of the adoptive person? I'm going to tell you something. I want you to give me your email, or give you your email. You don't have to. On July the 4th, I am doing a photo shoot with success stories who were adopted. One man I wrote to, he's a very successful man. I can't say who he is now, but he wept when he got the email. It's going to be for the Observer News Review, and it's on July the 4th, and I'd like you to come to that. But the reason, that could be a sweetener, but the point is this. What I'm trying to say to people is that, number one, an adoption person does not have to hide the idea that they're adopted. It's a kind of prejudice inside families that assumes that there's something wrong with adoption. Superman was adopted as well, you'll know. James Bond was fostered. Luke Skywalker was adopted. Matilda was in children's homes. Spider-Man, Lisbeth Salander, my own personal favorite. Lisbeth Salander, the girl with the dragon tattoo, adopted, fostered, institutionalized. Elf, fostered. Oliver Twist, David Copperfield, Heathcliff, orphaned. Yeah, I've said Oliver Twist. Romulus and Remus, Paddington Bear. Anybody got any others? Seriously, Paddington Bear. Anne of Green Gables, pardon? Prophet Muhammad, thank you. Also Bilal, the first muezzin, was fostered by Prophet Muhammad, yes? Harry Potter was a foster child. Jesus had 2 dads. I mean, don't say that, do they? Jesus had 2 dads. Moses was adopted. We are everywhere, front and center in popular and classic culture. That we've not been seen as that those great examples have not been seen as that, shows a prejudice that's in society. So it's our job to fight that prejudice, which is specifically why I am doing that photo shoot on July the 4th. Just one more thing. Just one more thing, folks. This is the Migration Matters Festival, and this is all about connecting through stories. And please support Migration Matters. But do me one favor and take a photograph, will you, on stage, so that I can get this memory. And can you put it on Twitter and on Facebook and on what the other one? Instagram, and tag me at Lem Sisse, but also tag Migration Matters. Why don't we do this more? We should, all right? This is me doing a Q&A, being really thoughtful, like I'm a listener. This is the rock and roll poem. Yes! Yeah! Ow. Some of you will have seen me get older over the years, and I'd just like to, whoever that is, I'd like to thank you for that, because it's a good thing. Lots of love, folks.
Lem Sisse, everybody please be upstanding.
Sweet me.
Lem Sisse is going to be signing his book.
I've got to take a shot of you. Wait, no, don't sit down. Don't sit
Stand,
down.
keep standing, and if you're not standing, please stand up if you can. Yeah. Come on, Sheffield. Lem Sisse, everybody. Now, Lem will be signing his book. My Name is Why, out there in the corridors.
I'll be there.
Yeah, he'll be there with you. Reminder that we've still got a long program at Migration Matters Festival. We've got Sean Kuti on the 22nd. Get your tickets. Lots more there. Then also, the Sheffield Christmas Dinner. So Lem founded the Christmas Dinner, which is a national thing that happens. It's in support of care leavers. So they're looking for donations for the Sheffield version of it. And if you could go to easyfundraising.org.uk and find the Christmas Dinner Sheffield, and please donate to that so you could support some care leavers. But thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good night.